Hello. Today's hymn is the well-loved "The King of Love, My Shepherd Is." The text is a version of Psalm 23 by Henry Baker, who lived in England in the 1800s. This is one of those hymns which has retained its King James language with these and thous and ETH and EST endings with words. This has helped it last and will help it last longer into the future. Why? Because we can remember it, because it doesn't change. Memory is much undervalued in our quest for new and fresh and modernizing, which we desperately need, but we have to consider the effect of our memory when we do that. And sometimes modernizing is a quick way for something to get dated. Do you remember that modern kitchen you did in the 1990s? Or when you did that in the 90s, trying to get rid of those avocado appliances from the 1960s? We just should be very careful when we modernize and consider what we're doing. But I've struggled learning Psalm 23. It's one of the best known Psalms. It's not that long, but when I struggle to bring it out of memory, I get stuck. And I think that's because it's been different in every hymnal I've grown up in, and I've learned so many versions of it. They're all mixed together in my head, and I get mixed up and can't find the right flow. I'm all for updating language and modernizing, and I'm absolutely 100% in favor of inclusive language. But we must also consider memory, because we don't know when we're going to need it. In a tragic moment, or in a moment when our memory fails, those are times when we won't have access to a book to help us do it. I can recall being on the couch, writhing in pain with the back fully in spasm, trying to calm down with Psalm 23, and I kept getting stuck. But this hymn I could recite. The King of love, my shepherd is, whose goodness faileth never. I nothing lack if I am his, and he is mine forever. This hymn has remained unchanged for the 3 hymnals I've gone through so far in my lifetime. And in fact, most denominational hymnals, most, not all, but most of them have kept this text unchanged. And that's one of the reasons we can all get a chance to memorize it. We don't have kings and queens in our time, and we certainly don't talk with these and thous and ETH endings. But we understand the concepts of what the shepherd means and how God takes care of us, and that's comforting to us. That we understand. The tune is one of those perfect tunes, perhaps Irish, named after the Irish saint, Saint Columba, who brought Christianity to Scotland. It has a perfect shape, mostly stepwise, has 4 waves. The first 2 climb to the highest one, which is a third, and then a follow-up gentle one. Mostly stepwise. Here's the first wave. Second wave goes a little higher. And the third one is the high point. And the last gentle wave is a follow-up. It just goes where it wants to go. It's so perfect, in fact, that I've used it for the National Lutheran Choir auditions for almost 20 years. I hope I haven't ruined this hymn for all the singers of the National Lutheran Choir. The improvisation I used to introduce this hymn makes use of a musical tool which composers have used over history as a symbol for following. That tool is the canon, and in this case, the sheep following the shepherd. It begins with a gentle falling line in canon. And then the melody of the hymn is also presented in canon in the introduction. The choir sings stanzas 1 and 2 in a setting by Paul J. Christiansen, who was a Lutheran choir college legend in Concordia College, Moorhead, Minnesota. He and his father, Epimelius Christiansen, the founder of the St. Olaf Choir, and some would say the founder of the Midwest Lutheran College Choir a cappella tradition, both of them frequently wrote choral arrangements of hymns. Epimelius was said to have been very inspired by the music of Bach and Bach's frequent use of hymns in his compositions. Even in the massive passions of J.S. Bach, chorales are interspersed throughout that may have been sung by everybody as they performed those pieces. Stanza 1 is a lovely 4-part men's setting with long, lovely flowing lines. Stanza 2 is the full choir, sopranos, altos, tenors, and basses, with lush and full lines that flow from one to the other, and lots of wonderful lines for altos, which we certainly love in these parts. All of this leads to stanza 5, which the congregation sings in canon, which works beautifully musically and symbolically, all leading towards stanza 6, the full-bodied praise, which we say will sing in God's house forever. Well, at least until a pandemic is over, we'll sing metaphorically, but actually, God's house is everywhere, so we can sing God's praise wherever we are.